Even now, I think the person who is going to take over from Zawahiri is also an Egyptian, an officer of the, a former officer of the Egyptian Special Forces, a lieutenant colonel, who was responsible for the, if you remember, the Black Hawk Down movie, the ambush of the American soldiers, the helicopter, which crashed in Mogadishu in Somalia, and his name is Saif al-Adel, and I think he is perhaps would be more dangerous than Jawahiri. Jawahiri was suffering from various ailments, and here is a special forces officer who is now reportedly in Iran. So it'll be very difficult for the war and terror operatives with the capital U, the United States, to sort of track him down.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Swarajya. You're watching Swarajya Conversations with Sharan Setty. I'm privileged to be joined by Mr. Jaideep Saikia, who is a fellow at West Point. In fact, the only Asian fellow at West Point in the Irregular Warfare Initiative. He's written many books, including books on national security, Sino-Indian border, and he's one of the most well-informed scholars on Islamist studies. In that sense, Jaideep ji, thank you so much. A very good evening to you. Welcome to Swarajya. This is our first conversation here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Very glad to have you here. Yesterday, President Joe Biden made a statement saying that the Al Qaeda chief Al-Zawahiri has been killed by a bomb strike in Kabul, Afghanistan. So, since you have been studying Al Qaeda and its effects on India and its growing footprint in South Asia, what is your opening remarks and how did you, welcome this particular statement of Mr. Biden?
Well, I think the strike itself was a very spectacular one, almost a textbook strike, if I can count it that way. Uh, After the withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan, there were no boots on the ground, as it were. But even the student in me were fooled, and I thought there were no American presence. But certainly now, on hindsight, after this spectacular strike, it seems that they certainly had socks in the closet. I mean, there were deep assets in Afghanistan, and the United States probably had, uh, you know, as I said, closet socks, even among the Taliban, and you know, very inconspicuously, Kabul had become the hub of both the Islamic State. Later on, it became the Islamic State of Khorasan province, and of course, the Al Qaeda. And the emir of Al Qaeda was very, liberally sort of staying there in a posh locality. And this particular strike by, a drone attack, really, by the United States CIA on the 30th of July, which was a very clinical, precise strike with no collateral damage, actually took him down. I think that really augurs well for the counterterrorism, phenomena in the world. Back to you,
Right.
Sharan.
As much as this is celebrated and appreciated, a lot of people are congratulating the United States intelligence and the military for doing this. But does it not reflect a sense of failure on the behalf of the United States administration? Because the war on terror has been going on for a very long time, and this perhaps could not be done without the local support of the local administration in Kabul. What's your thought on this?
Like I said, I think the Americans, despite the fact that they had withdrawn all the boots on the ground, they probably had some deep assets which they had left behind, uh, which is quite revealing. And otherwise, how would they sort of pinpoint the exact location? I mean, Jawahiri was standing on a balcony, and this particular drone, which is very interesting, Hellfire Romeo 9X, which is very precise, which did not have any collateral damage and actually took him down. So they had deep assets, probably even within the Taliban, or perhaps the former National Directorate of Security of the former dispensation in Afghanistan, which Yes, I mean, the United States failed in the sense that they had wait since 2011 when they actually took down bin Laden in Abbottabad in Pakistan. And since then, of course, Zawahiri had been running Al-Qaeda. But, well, better late than never. Fact of the matter is that they have been able to do this is a success of sorts. And I think I would like to underscore one aspect here that this particular strike should come as an important lesson for our country, for India, really. And because we have been living with terror and insurgency for a long time, and our armed forces, our agencies know exactly, for instance, where our uh, these terrorist leaders and insurgent leaders, billeting across the borders. For instance, let's talk about the northeast for a while. We know exactly where in Yunnan the chief of the Alpha is, or where in Sagaing division of Myanmar the coordination committee leaders are in a place called in what is called the southern cluster. They have something called the Joint Fighting Force. Even as we near the 15th of August, we hear a lot of talk of violence which is going to be perpetrated by these people. But apart from two surgical strikes, which really weren't that damaging, we're talking about the surgical strike which took place in Myanmar in 2015 and the one which took place in POK later after the Uri attack. But the sort of precision strike which the United States carried out first in 2011 and now against Zawahiri, I think, the textbook precision kill should be emulated by our agencies as well. I think, at least the Indian armed forces, the Indian special forces, and the Indian army is certainly capable of that. But there should be a political resolve from right at the top to be able to sort of enable the our agencies to sort of replicate the successes of the
Right.
United States.
Al Qaeda did have a lot of activities going on, not just in Kashmir, but they did attempt to strike other parts of India too. In that sense, Zawahiri repeatedly made a lot of statements against India, encouraging the illegal immigrants here in the state to be radicalized and take up arms against the country. So, in that sense, how do you see Al Qaeda's role in dismantling or challenging our national security in India, and especially Zawahiri, because he's been issuing statements of support, whether it's to the hijab protests or even the Assamese Muslims, which you have written about in the past?
Yeah, actually, Jawahari came into the firmament quite decisively in on the 3rd of September 2014 when he gave a televised speech where he actually proclaimed the creation of the Al Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent. And I was a member of the task force which was looking at his speech quite closely. And one of the things which struck me was that he mentioned among uh, Kashmir, Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Burma. He mentioned even Assam. Now, in the scheme of the global scheme of things which Al Qaeda is known for, Assam is a very puny thing. But I thought I was very apprehensive of the fact that half of the battle was won when he mentioned Assam. And true enough, after the Burdwan blast, there have been, radicalization efforts in our state, in Assam. And of late, the last couple of weeks actually, uh, and hats off to the special branch of the Assam police, we made some spectacular arrest of the Ansarullah Bangla team, which is a Bangladesh-based Islamist organization, but it has clear affiliations with the Al Qaeda. So it was very clear that the Jawahiri gaze was on Assam, on parts of the of Myanmar, particularly the Rohingya belt and Bengal. So that was quite clear, and perhaps the demographic pattern which constitutes Assam really was in his sights, and that is why he mentioned Assam in his televised speech. And the radicalization efforts, Sharanji, in Assam have been taking place. As you know, we have about 34% of minority population in Lower Assam, and that was in 2011 census. 2021, there was no census because of the COVID. But if there were to be a projection, a decadal projection, it is, to my understanding, it would be as close as 45% minority population, which is like, it's quite a lot of, a huge population. And I'm not saying for a moment that 100% of the minority population in Assam are radicalized, and but the fact of the matter is, efforts are on from by way of this alien agenda, by way of the Ansarullah Bangla team, which has actually infiltrated Assam in a big way from Bangladesh, because perhaps because of the pressure which they have feeling there. And latest reports say that this time, the radicalization efforts are actually trained against the educated class, against what they call the street smart recruits, because things have gone high tech, and the Islamist radicals, I think they're one step ahead of the authorities. But nonetheless, I think it's a great success that they have been able to stem the tide. Really, I will not say that the entire thing has been washed away, and the arrest of perhaps just a tip of the iceberg. And in the coming days, if the special branch continues to be as alert as it is, I think we will see more arrests and apprehensions. But we must understand the methodology by which this particular menace has to be countered. And if you want, I can sort of go about talking about it by way of a few recommendations.
No, we will get to that, but I would like to know a little more about Zawahiri because he comes from an Egyptian background, and essentially Al Qaeda was Saudi Arabian, especially with Bin Laden being at the helm of affairs. So, how did that impact the overall administration? Was he accepted within the organization? And the most important question that people are asking is, what is the future of Al Qaeda from here? Because for quite some time they have been dormant. They were not as active as they were earlier, perhaps. So in that sense, will they continue to be relevant in the region in terms of disrupting and becoming, spreading those terror hubs across South Asia? So what is the way going forward, even in terms of national security?
Well, I think Al Qaeda continues to be very relevant, especially after the I would say success with inverted commas of Operation Inherent Resolve, which ousted the Islamic State from the territory it was holding in Syria and Iraq. You see, I think that was a bad strategy, because the ouster actually scattered them all over the world. You don't know what happens. And then just a couple of, I think just about a month ago, you had a lone wolf shootout in what do you call in Oslo, Norway. So you have radicals all over the world now. And Al Qaeda, after the Talibanization of Afghanistan, naturally has got into Afghanistan because the Taliban reneged on the Doha Agreement with the United States, and both the Islamic State, perhaps the avatar of the Islamic State of Khorasan province, and the Al Qaeda were having safe haven there. But to answer your other question, I think yes, the succession immediately after Bin Laden's death was little, difficult, because after all, most of the leadership was from the Arab Peninsula, and accepting a person from the Egyptian Islamic Brotherhood was difficult. But even now, I think the person who is going to take over from Jawahiri is also an Egyptian, an officer of the a former officer of the Egyptian Special Forces, a lieutenant colonel, who was responsible for the, if you remember, the Black Hawk Down movie, the ambush of the American soldiers, the helicopter, which crashed in Mogadishu in Somalia. And his name is Saif al-Adel. And I think he is perhaps would be more dangerous than Jawahiri. Jawahiri was suffering from various ailments, and here is a special forces officer who is now reportedly in Iran. So it'll be very difficult for the war and terror operatives with the capital U, the United States, to sort of track him down. But the fact of the matter is that he has been controlling the Al Qaeda. I mean, we must not go by Al Qaeda's 9/11, success. They have been, the fact that they have been forming affiliates all over the world, including the Al Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, and having tanzeems in places like Bangladesh, like Ansarullah Bangla Team, and the Neo JMB. And I've always held that the Islamic State and the Al Qaeda have always had a convergence of objectives. They might have had problems about the Shia aspect, but after the ouster, after the failure now, I would say, of Operation Inherent Resolve, they actually had got together in Afghanistan, and we have seen that there would be now a duality of objective in at least South Asia, and it has come near home. The eastward surge of the jihadi has come to Assam, and we have seen this. We have witnessed
Right.
this in the last couple of weeks. Only yesterday there was another apprehension from Barpeta district of Assam. So I think you see there is another thing which I must point out to your viewers, that there is a marked difference between an insurgent outfit and an Islamic radical outfit. We've had examples of the Mizo National Front giving up arms, coming back to the mainstream, swearing by the Indian Constitution, and now you have the trusted lieutenant of the legendary Lal Denga sitting in the seat of office of the chief minister. But as far as the Islamist radical organization is concerned, there are only two options. Either he will be a Ghazi or he'll be a Shaheed. And this revolution or this movement is going to be a never ending one. It'll go on till the end of time or until Nizam and Mustafa or the rule of Islam is achieved. So you must understand. So there's a marked difference. Al Qaeda might sort of metamorphose into a different name, the way Saif al-Adel will sort of control this metrics and driven command and control organization and hit at the far enemy would perhaps be a little different from the way Zawahiri acted. But the fact of the matter is, this war is going to continue.
No, you bring up a very important point, and perhaps it also reflects the poor understanding of the U.S. intelligence of the Indian subcontinent and South Asia in general. Because every time they take out a particular chief of a terror outfit, there is somebody else who will take over the leadership. So essentially, they form different groups, they have different names, but the ideology remains the same, the motive remains the same, the foot soldiers are still the same, and they still continue to get the weapons and the resources that are required. So, in that sense, does it actually indicate a lack of understanding of or having a proper counter-terror policy as far as America is concerned? How can they actually fix this problem once and for all? Because now they may celebrate Zawahiri's death temporarily, but like you said, the person who is coming up may have different sinister plans ahead for America or the rest of the world.
I think you're very right there, Sharanji. I think there is a acute lack of comprehension not only in the United States but even in India. For instance, you need to sort of train your sights not just at the leadership and but the entire parish which constitutes this menace. For instance, I've been talking for the last about 5 years a theory called counter-radicalization, as opposed to what is being practiced all over the world, particularly in India right now. This is which is called de-radicalization. You can never de-radicalize a person. I mean, people who have been released from Guantanamo Bay on the ground that he has been de-radicalized have gone back to terrorism. You don't have a science which looks inside a brain and says the person has been radicalized. As a matter of fact, I have written about the fact that people can get radicalized without having read the Quran. So there are various ways a person gets radicalized. People have converted to Islam in order to perpetrate the sort of barbaric terror which Islamic State had been doing in Syria and Iraq. Machete murders in Bangladesh, beheadings, etc., etc. So there is a kind of a appeal for the blood and gore. So the fact of the matter is, I think the establishment, whether it is the United States or in India, has to actually put his finger right into the problem. Why is this clash of civilization happening? what is this transformative movement that Islam is going through, and then try to sort of address that particular problem. Killing a Jawahiri, killing a Osama bin Laden, or perhaps killing the next leader who is going to come, whether it is Saif al-Adel or whoever, will probably be a day of celebration. But the fact of the matter is, Al Qaeda is maybe down, but certainly not out. That has to be understood. President Biden might have sort of rejoiced at the fact that that the precision strike by a particular drone
Yeah.
took down an important leader who had a very big bounty on his head. But the fact of the matter is, I think retribution is also going to be very swift from the side of the Al Qaeda now. You know what's going to happen? Maybe the homeland of the United States is secure. Maybe 9/11 might not happen. But I can tell you for a certainty, and this is, I hope I'm wrong, Sharanji, but Al Qaeda and its affiliates, along with the Islamic State, which are now conjoined, are going to hit at United States interests in South and Southeast Asia. You will see attacks on embassies, you will see attacks on American centers, etc., in South Asia, in Pakistan, in India, Bangladesh, and in this part of the world. You see, retribution is going to be swift. You recall what happened immediately after Bin Laden was taken down in Abbottabad in Pakistan. They didn't even wait for the 40-day mourning period, which Islamic, rule normally observes. They attacked PNS Mehran because it had decisive United States connection with the P-3 Orion in the anti-submarine aircraft. So the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan immediately sort of attacked the PNS Mehran in Karachi. So I fear that in the days to come there would be retribution, and it would be swift. You can be quite certain about that. As I said, I hope
Right.
I'm wrong, but there are closet affiliates, and in India we have groups like the Popular Front of India, and as we have seen in the Assam
Yeah.
Ansarullah Bangla team. So they are all coming out of the woodwork, and you see there is a thing called retribution, which is very, very deep set in the Islamist mind or Islamist, psyche. I think that is going to manifest itself very soon.
What some people are saying, especially security analysts are saying, is that the dynamics after the end of war on terror, I mean, not the end of war on terror, at least the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the dynamics have changed. Now, the Taliban is attempt to becoming a legitimate actor, an international actor which has recognition and brings about legitimacy to the government itself, to the Kabul administration. So, in that sense, a lot of these other actors that are present in Afghanistan, whether it's ISIS Khorasan or even Al Qaeda for that matter, may become challenging factors. So, which is why one of the theory that's popularly floating around the internet is that the Pakistanis, would have probably worked with the Taliban to eliminate Zawahiri because they need to show something in order to get, funding from the IMF, or that's one of the theories that's there. So, how much does this actually hold weightage, or what is your analysis behind how
No,
this was
I think
actually achieved?
I think you're very correct. I think you put your finger right on the thought here. I think Jawahiri was ailing first, and he was aging. Perhaps and in human nature, once you're done and dusted with, you can be sort of expendable. It's possible that the inter-service intelligence of Pakistan, in after all, its connections with the Taliban are quite clear, could have helped the United States to sort of track down Jawahiri, so that United States gets a breather of sorts. Joe Biden gets his a pat on his back from his constituency. But the fact of the matter is, you see, Taliban has learned from its mistakes. The de-Talibanization which happened in 2001 is very different now. The United States knew what was Afghanistan was getting into when they withdrew the boots on the ground from Afghanistan. They knew that. But the fact of the matter is, Taliban, as you very correctly said, because it doesn't want to sort of attract international censure the way it had received 2 decades ago, is now sort of trying to sort of hunt with the hares, hounds, and run with the hares. So they're trying to sort of say that, well, we don't have anything. In fact, they have condemned the American attack, but they will probably wash their hands away off from Jawahiri's presence in Kabul, exactly the way Pakistan did in 2011 when they said that we didn't know that Bin Laden was hiding in in the Haveli in Abbottabad. So I think that's very important. The inter-services intelligence, I mean, it of Pakistan, it sort of waxes and wanes, and in the manner it expects itself to do. If tomorrow it needs IMF support or Western support, especially in this very uncertain world where the crisis in Ukraine is taking place, it'll sort of take sides where it finds a successful way out. You see, one of the things which India should take a lesson from is the fact that in fact, lay observers of this particular action which the United States carried out in Kabul. I went for a haircut yesterday. Even the barber was asking, why is India, for instance, not being able to replicate this particular action? It's interesting. Lay observers. I'm a student of security, but the fact of the matter is, our agencies know exactly where our insurgent leaders are. They've been plotting them on maps, etc., for many years now. But little has been done. And I think, as I said before, it's important that the lesson should be replicated, and the world should be actually shown what India can do, because it can do that. The exhibition is important for the population, for the polity, and for the world at large. That India can act with the same sort of dexterity with which the United States acted against terrorist leaders. For instance, even extremist leaders who are now billeted in Myanmar or in the Sino-Myanmar border have been sort of rebel rousing against the state, and it's time that India sort of took a page out of the United States anti-terrorism theory or doctrine or whatever you can call it, and sort of try and replicate that as soon as possible. I think we are perhaps one of the most terror afflicted of nations, and it's high time that our state security establishment acted with some guts.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jaideep ji. It's always enlightening to talk to you about these subjects. And in the future, I hope we can curate a session specifically on the trajectory of terrorism and how India can deal with it, and some of these subjects which you are really passionate about. And I'm sure our viewers would be very interested to listen to you speak on a lot of these things.
Thank you for.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Namaste. And viewers, please do let us know what you thought about this. And if you have any questions for Mr. Saikia, please do type them in the comment section below, and and I think Mr. Saikia will be very happy to join us next time to answer a lot of these questions.
Thank you so much.